you're not okay, what are you doing about it? Because this is where it's premised. And for those who probably then encounter problems, you start to say to yourself, I should have taken better care of myself. And I really, if I knew what to do, I should have done it. We shouldn't take our lives for granted. And a lot of the times, we're not really being fair to ourselves. Okay, we're helping everybody else, taking care of everybody else, but we don't take care for ourselves. But today, I'm very glad, as always, to have a beautiful lady who comes through to the studio to just talk about self-care. And so her lovely name is Sottovoce Ruach. Yes, I got it right.
Yes, you
Yes,
did.
I got it. And she's a clinical systemic therapist. And so she is award winning, and she's been on various platforms in terms of broadcasting, and she's also an author and very good with mindset coaching. And so this is where we all need to be, tuning our minds to the important stuff. And so very glad to be joining us this morning. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome stuff. And now I know we've been talking in the past, I think the week before, last weekend, where we're talking about self-care, and we're not really doing as much as we should. I'd like to believe.
We're not.
Yeah, we're so caught up in so many things. We're busy. I wake up in the morning, I'm literally like rolling out, tumbleweeding out, and then just going, and we're forgetting that we need to also be in good health and a good mental space to be
That's
able to
true.
be good to everybody else. And so communicating this is also another, I think, downside that we have and we're facing. We don't know who to talk to when we've got a problem.
That is true.
What do we do? Let's just say I'm in my room right now. I'm saying I got problems, but the people I need to talk to are not available. I don't know. And
Okay.
I don't trust everyone else.
That's the perfect starting point.
Mm-hmm.
So basically in Zimbabwe, we've got a lot of mental health practitioners who work in different areas. Firstly, we've got the psychiatrist. That's when a person's got a mental disorder. And then we've got clinical, psychologist, also helps with mental health. We have clinical social worker, helps with mental health. We've got the clinical systemic therapist, and then we've got the systemic counselor, we've got the counseling psychologist, we've got the counselor, and we've got the social worker. So all those people at any given point can actually help you and give you direction. And it doesn't really matter where you start, because I'll tell you this, this is a referral system whereby if you come to maybe a systemic counselor and they realize that this is way beyond what their scope of practice and their capacity, they'll refer you to a systemic therapist like myself. And then again, you find a person who's like a counselor can realize, no, this maybe actually requires a counseling psychologist or a clinical psychologist. So the major thing is to start somewhere. The referral can come from your doctor, can come from, one person who's within the fraternity, the mental health fraternity, but start somewhere and start with the professional. The reason why I love your question is because I've seen a lot of people who go with their troubles and problems to pastors, very well-meaning pastors, but sometimes the problem can become bad to worse. I'm a person who's also off the collar, but at the same time, I will say it and I will submit it humbly that, you know what, mental health is like, it's a health factor. It's a health issue. So sometimes treat your mental health the same way you would treat your physical health. You wouldn't just go to your pastor and leave it there. Going to the pastor is amazing. It's awesome. They help you on a spiritual level. But at the same time, if you've got cancer, if you've got a heart problem, you're not just going to go to your pastor and leave it there. You're also going to engage the professionals. So that's one thing that's key.
Yeah, the medical aspect of it, there is science researched in terms of getting help. So this is why they're called qualified practitioners, because we sometimes go to someone who's not qualified.
And they also have to be licensed. Make sure they're licensed, certified within Zimbabwe by the Allied Health Practitioners Council of Zimbabwe. Because if they're not, then you've got a problem. especially if it's anyone else aside from the psychiatrist. You have to make sure that they're certified, because they're fly by night and pop-ups and mushroom people who do these little small courses on counseling and mental health, and they call themselves all those big titles, and they're not licensed and certified. They've done a little 2 months course or maybe a day, half-day course, and they go around telling people that they're practitioners, which is dangerous. So you actually have the right to say, can I please verify your licensing? Yeah.
Yeah. We don't. Tinonyara.
Yeah, you
There's
shouldn't,
a lot of
because
the time
this is your life.
usaziva as well. I always say this here, ask your hairdresser as well. Ask your health practitioner. All of these people about their qualifications. It's not to insult them.
And it's not the
But-
loudest on social media. That's always, it's not that the person who's very visible and very vocal and very verbal, it doesn't actually mean they're licensed and qualified and certified. That's one very key thing, because those that are actually doing the work, mostly they're very quiet, silent. People barely know them, which is something that we need to work at as practitioners. And then there are people who do Google, learning, and Instagram learning. They're learning from all those platforms, and they come and they throw in 1-2 terminologies, and everybody thinks they're a practitioner, whereas they're not.
And so if you're getting help, let's just say you are a very key person within your family confines, but you need help. Is there a high possibility, or lack thereof, that even the people around you might also be facing something as a result of your possible position in terms of not being okay?
Absolutely. Systemic therapy means that no man is an island, and then there is interdependability and interaction of the secular causality is the term, whereby what I do is actually going to affect my spouse, it's going to affect my children, it's going to affect you, Brita, it's going to even affect my clients, it's going to affect everybody. The reason is I'm not showing up as my true authentic self from my healed space. So that's when I'm then bleeding trauma on the rest of the people, which is sadly what's going on with everybody else. I always say the majority of people who are in therapy are there because of the people who actually needed it most, who refuse to actually acknowledge that therapy helps and that they need it.
I think it's very important. If you know within the household, and I always say, get a piece of paper and write it down. What is going on in your home? We don't really take an inventory of that, to pay attention to those things. So if someone is to sit and say, I'm taking an inventory of where we are at, so we can measure, are we okay? What practical thing can they be doing to probably put and deliberate and see that we've got an issue here? What could they be doing?
Do you know where the challenge is? A lot of people have got faulty thinking patterns that are passed down through generations. So there's multi-generational trauma that's moving in a lot of families today as we speak. And the challenge is you don't know it's wrong if you don't know it's wrong. And if you're rigid and you're not willing to learn and change certain things. For example, your parenting style can be very, traumatizing, but it's informed by the generations from the past. The cheating spouse is doing it because it's been passed down through generations. So there is like a replicative script of things that are harmful. So what's necessary is for people to do exactly what you're saying. Sit down and really reflect upon your life. Who am I? How did I get to be this person? What did my parents do that maybe I need to adjust? A lot of people have got a challenge whereby if my mom did it, it means it's okay. I always argue with my brother. He's like, okay, you need to call everybody. You need to be in touch with everybody. You need to, because our mom is passed away, and she's one person who would call everybody, who would, check in on everybody. It's awesome. But I found it was actually quite exhausting for her. That's my perception of it. Number one. Number two, sometimes you're in people's spaces and those people don't even appreciate you. So for me, it then comes to an issue of, I'm the exact opposite of that.
Mm.
I live my little private life. I live my private space. I have a little circle of people that I think those people really matter in my life. There are two ways of looking at it. It could be that I went to the extremist of the extremes, which is not a good thing, or it could be I can actually manage it and do it in a way that's healthy and create boundaries. So it's not always that the things that the people that we love the most did or do are the most perfect things. And sometimes people are trapped in that because the late person, when they were dying, said to, let's say, a man, don't cry, you're the man. I always used to say that about my husband, because when my father-in-law passed away, may his soul rest in peace, he was an awesome man. But on his deathbed, he says to my husband, don't cry, you have to be strong.
Oh, no.
So up to now, I still don't believe my husband has actually grieved over his dad. And it's since 2018. Why? Because he was told, don't cry, be strong.
Shame.
In as much as then it was a well-meaning statement, sometimes it might have been taken literally, but then the interpretation may have been misinterpreted to say maybe in this moment you need to be strong, maybe for a season as you go through the process. But sometimes a lot of people, a lot of males particularly, abort their grief, which we call aborted grief. So sometimes when you abort your grief, it can turn into compound grief, which becomes very complex, because you can have grief over, let's say, in my case, I lost my mom and then I lost my sister. So you find that if I don't grieve the passing of my mom, and then I don't grieve the passing of my sister, and then I have other losses that come, like I had a miscarriage, if I don't grieve that, they become compound, because it's one on top of the other and becomes complex. And that's how a lot of people are living their lives. A lot of people out there are living with a lot of grief based on systems and patterns that have been passed down through generations. For example, if we talk about the whole miscarriage aspect, a lot of people are told you don't cry when you miscarry. You don't cry. Yes, in the African culture is there. You don't cry over a miscarriage, and you're also not allowed to have people come and say condolences. You also don't cry over losing a stillbirth or losing an infant, because there are myths and beliefs that then it's gonna do something and cause death of all the other children that are gonna. There's a whole lot. But when you talk to grieving moms, they are hurting. But not just grieving moms. I realized over the years that I thought I was bereaved over the loss of our miscarriage, but I also realized my husband was so bereft over that. And all this while I was like the victim. I was like, I lost my child. And until one day he says, you know what, Sottovoce, do you realize this was my child too? Do you realize even I had hopes and dreams for this child too? So again, a lot of men, particularly from where you're standing, the question you asked, where you started by asking, if you're in a certain position in a family, a lot of men don't grieve, they don't go through whatever they are going through. And then again, we also have a lot of women who are toxic and causing a lot of men pain. And in that case, hurt people hurt people. When men are hurt, they're going to hurt you back. They're going to hurt the kids. They're going to hurt all the other people. Likewise, we have a generation of very toxic females, and it's coming from the fact that they're coming from a past where either they saw their mom being traumatized by dad, and now they're on a comeback, on a revenge trauma, sharing or trauma transference, where these women, the ones possibly that are labeled AMA 2K, are a product of a lot of pain that's coming from the parents. And sadly, a lot of parents tell their children, you are not depressed. You are not. I saw this girl, Connie, she's very funny. She does this kids where she's like saying, when you're coming from therapy and you're a Black person and you're in Africa, and your mother is now calling you depression, is now saying, you know what, you're not going to commit suicide, are you? Let me carry you on my back, and all those funny, condescending things. But that is the reality of what's happening to the child today. The mom is traumatized. The dad is traumatized. They're pushing the trauma on the children, and they say kids don't suffer depression. I remember when we were growing up, when you're told girl child cannot suffer from a back pain. I don't know if you ever experienced anything like that, but there are these things that are passed down and they are toxic and they're hurting people. When someone says they're not well, they're not well. Look into it. That's how people end up committing suicide. Again, when you're not well, stop. Sometimes one of the best things to do, you said you saw me flying as I was getting in here. It's it's something that I need to work at.
Yeah.
Your time management, it's a form of self-care. It's a form of self-love. Sleep when you need to. Say no when you need to. And I keep emphasizing, say no when you need to.
Shame. You've just brought up something that's important. I felt as well is the things that are peddled or pushed as being a societal norm or a rule that one needs to live by. I always ask the question, who wrote the rules?
Whose truth? What truth?
Whose
That's what we
truth?
say in psychology.
Whose truth and what's
What
truth?
truth? Because culture is something that you and me can create our own culture. And it's something I always say to parents, to spouses, you know what? I have a culture that came from my parents. They took it from wherever they took it. You've got a culture that came from your parents. They took it from wherever and however. Because it's my mom-in-law's culture, my father-in-law's culture, all brought together, and it creates the culture that forms my husband or informs my husband's patterns. Likewise, I've got my mom's patterns, my dad's patterns, all coming from their different families. So at the end of the day, when you come together as a couple, you have to create your own culture, just the two of you. Where you say, okay, we used to do this in my mother's house or in my parents' house, but no, we're not going to do that. We're going to put that aside. Because a lot of people get into marriage sometimes and they think, okay, look, we're going to do it my way because this is how it was done, my family, and it's perfect. And then the other one is coming and saying, no, my mom did it best. But then the best way is to say, okay, we've got this. How do we handle this? How do we handle, parenting? How do we discipline our children? How do we do this? How do we do this? How do we do this? Because that's where a lot of people, my dad used to come, okay, in course, not my dad. Someone who said their dad used to get on whatever time they did and it was okay. Or their dad had a lot of mistresses and it was okay. Their parents used to butter them thoroughly blue black until a child could barely cry because the pain is too much.
It's too much. It's unfortunate our time having run out, but we need to thrash this here because I'm seeing the people are still typing. I wish I could have typed faster, but it's all good. Thank you so much. I think there's a comment that's come through. This lady's talking a lot of sense. Thank you for this. I know there's a lot of hurting people as well who just don't know why they're hurting, and they act out, and we wonder why someone is acting out because we don't understand
Absolutely.
These behaviors that are now being perpetuated.
That's a topic for itself.
But thank you so much, Sottovoce Ruach, and we just, I cannot tell you how helpful this has been, and I'm hoping this is going to help someone who's in need of hearing this to reflect, self-introspect as well, and say, okay, where am I? And I need help. If you need help, get it.
Thank you so much.
Please have a good one and enjoy your Africa Day tomorrow. I know we're going to be having quite a nice lineup. We're doing a simulcast broadcast with the Gabs FM tomorrow morning on my show. So excited about that. Even later on, as Boss Comfort is also having his with the station in SA. And of course, the following day as well, we've got quite a number of simulcasts that are coming through from various stations. And it's a time to also just look into how other nations are actually doing on this barometer. But thank you so much, Soto. We look forward to chatting again soon.
Cheers.
You are tuned into Capitalk 100.4